It is 10, I am showing 10:30. I am calling the Streets and Transportation Committee to order. Our first order of business is roll call. I am showing present David Mann, John Gauker, Tony Sharp, Dennis Deal, and Kathy Osterholm. I am showing absent John Eckenrode, who told me that he had another commitment this morning and could not be here, and Dan Miller. And who am I missing?
Donna Mabry.
Oh, Donna Mabry. Okay. Then approval of the minutes. For the audience, there are copies of the agenda and the minutes from our previous meeting up here on the chairs if you would like a copy of them. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from April the 5th? Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The minutes stand approved from the April 5th meeting. All right, update by the chair. We have a couple, I have very few updates in the big scheme of things this morning. The first update is you will notice that Del Doc has completed the ramp leading out of Grove Park Bicycle Trail. My understanding is that they will be completing that bike path from Columbia Grove out across the Canal Bridge prior to Memorial Day.
Oh.
You'll notice that there's a big bicycle sign on Rehoboth Avenue. I have not been given any formal updates by anyone. I'm just watching as you all are, but we'll watch that take place as it happens. Tony, you and Donna, and then Dan, who did not let me know that he was going to come to the merge meeting, but Tony and Donna attended the merge meeting because I had another commitment that day. So Tony, would you like to just give us a quick update on what you found from the meeting with merge? The city, let me just, as Tony's getting her notes ready, the city has contracted with merge to do signage. They are in the planning process as we speak, so there has been no formal signage presentation commitment, anything at this point, but they are on board to do signage. Donna? Dan's right behind you. And Dan's right behind you? Okay. All right, so Tony, would you like to give a quick update of the merge meeting? Donna, I just did attendance. Yes. Dan, I've got you and Donna in, and then Donna and Dan and Tony all went to the merge meeting. So.
Right, and I'm glad to see that Donna and Dan are here in case I say something that's not exactly their recollection or they would like to expand on something I'm going to say. The merge folks that came to talk to the committees spoke to quite a few stakeholders. And the committees that were called in were the Parking Advisory Committee, Streets and Transportation, Boardwalk, and Beach. So the three of us sat down and talked with them, and they went over their scope of their project, which is a design concept.
Tony, can I interrupt you just 1 minute?
Yes.
Because I want to clarify if I understand correctly. They met with each one of these committees separately.
They
so
did.
The only people that were at the meeting with merge were streets and transportation, the three streets and transportation people. These other people from these other committees were not at that exact same meeting.
Correct.
They met with each group individually.
Well, did we know about it?
It was a meeting that I was invited to, and that I needed someone to cover, that I sent an email out. So, okay, go ahead, Tony.
Well, and that was a really good way to start the briefings on this project, because they were looking to inform us on what they're getting ready to do, and then we were able to question them, give some perspectives or things to be aware of. So it worked out quite well because it was from our point of view here on the Streets and Transportation Committee. So when they talked about the scope of the project, They talked about their initiative to consolidate signage and clean up the clutter on Route 1. Their charge on Route 1 is from the Nassau Bridge to Rehoboth Avenue. So it's quite an expanse of territory that they're taking a look at. So the big picture on Route 1 is gateways. And certainly Rehoboth Avenue is our gateway. So they're taking a very close look at that and will be coming back with recommendations. I think what I can offer about that meeting was, it was informative for me from the standpoint of understanding that Merge is taking a very broad look at what happens on Route 1 and how it feeds into the gateways. And that it was just they're just getting started. And so I look forward to, certainly from a commission standpoint, is what they're going to come back and update the commissioners on and then potentially recommend for the commission. One of the things that they seem to be very well organized around and important to them is having designs for signs and signage that are very easy to understand. They showed us, as I think we've all seen before, all the clutter of signage out on Route 1, and City of Rehoboth may be guilty of that as well. But they're looking at a comprehensive, I'm gonna call it maybe a recommendation for overhaul on making all of this much more simple to understand and easy to navigate. So Donna or Dan, anything
Yeah.
from y'all?
That's pretty much it. You put a good synopsis of it.
Well, I think the other thing was they're not working just on Route 1, but eastern Sussex County, right? I think they've already been working and looking at the signage on the eastern part of the county plus Route 1 plus Rehoboth.
I think somebody did ask that question. I don't think it even goes down to Dewey, right?
No, it stops at
Somebody asked
Rehoboth
that.
Avenue,
Stops at Rehoboth
but
Avenue.
I was surprised their charge, or that they had been working in the county on Route 1 before they were coming to Rehoboth.
I know.
So they'd already done some preliminary look at those things, and then they'll coordinate Rehoboth's signage with that. And the main way they were getting rid of clutter, signage clutter, would be they would have signs, compilation signs. They would have one big sign that would have multiple signs within it, you know.
And that's why I say I'm looking forward to what their evaluation really is, what their proposals are. And I did ask them time frame. What is the next step here from what they're doing right now? And what I believe they're working toward is getting back with the steering committee of the entire project for the city of Rehoboth Beach around the end of May or sometime in June, to give them a report, status update of where they are. So that was a good development. I thought that it's not an unending timeline here. I'll be looking to hear something end of May, sometime in June, so we'll all hopefully be able to know what's the status.
And as an update to that, Evan Miller, who is the city coordinator of the Merge project, told me that he will update me as soon as he has more information from them. At this point, he has not received any updates, but that he would be in touch.
Well, to add on to what Tony was saying, that once they get into Rehoboth, once they get people through the gateway, okay, there seems like their priorities, once in town, would be helping people find parking and helping people find the visitors information centers, okay? So that's what they think people logically need as they're arriving in town. So that'll, right?
Did we get into that much detail? I think.
Well, they did talk about that's how they approach this project. as far as us, what we have been working on, one of their last priorities would be things about pedestrian and bike signs. That they may not even do those, or they may make some recommendations, but it'd be left up to the city, maybe to do the actual signs.
Well, just just for you all to also be aware, Merge is being paid to do a plan. The implementation of the plan is decided by the city. So what will essentially happen is whatever Merge comes back with, there may be tiers of signage suggested, and it's up to the city to complete that signage. So the initial plan has nothing to do with the implementation of the actual signage. It's the plan.
Now, is that true on Del Dot streets too?
Yes, in the
Okay.
big scheme of things,
Rehoboth
That-
still does it.
that will be the way that it's handled.
And to add on to that, the other interesting thing with their perspective, when they add, present the plan to the city and they would present the city with options, like the options would be based on, and they would not break it down by area of the city. They would break it down by function, like they would say, like, we could direct people to parking throughout the whole town, okay, but they wouldn't say, we'll just focus on signs along Rehoboth Avenue. They wouldn't break it down geographically. They do it by sign function, okay? Or that they might do the most important signs and they might offer even more signs.
So the big scheme of things, right now, we're in no position to do anything, but we are part of the discussion. The next thing is I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting, thanks to John who alerted me to that. That was held on this past, the 30th, Tuesday. And the purpose of the Chamber of Commerce meeting that Carol Everhart conducted was to gather business people together to discuss a potential pedestrian area at the end of the boardwalk around the bandstand. As Chip Hearn, who of course owns an ice cream store, indicated, it's probably the first time he's been in a meeting that almost every business that's located at the end of the circle was represented at the meeting. So it was very well attended by the businesses involved. A pedestrian area was strongly turned down. And basically what the business owners said that not unanimously, but it was strongly discouraged because what their comments were is in most areas where pedestrian areas have been successful, it's when there are residents that live within a very short distance of that pedestrian area so they can walk or bike and use the pedestrian area for their benefits. With Rehoboth, there are not residences above the businesses by and large downtown. In other words, Rehoboth's population does not live in the downtown area by and large. So anyhow, that was the discussion there. Now, the only thing that I did want to update you on, because this was part of the discussion, is the business owners were very concerned about the amount of time that Rehoboth Avenue at that end of the boardwalk was shut down for occasions, because the business owners reported that that affects their business tremendously when there are barricades and people cannot drive, walk, or, well, they can't drive around the circle. And the other comment was, there were a number of city people here there at the meeting that heard this discussion. But the other thing is the discussion of the business owners at the chamber meeting was that for years and years, and I've heard this as a resident, people love to come into town and the very first thing they do is to drive the circle, see the ocean, and then turn around and go where they're going. So it's kind of, it was an interesting discussion. It was very interesting to me, since we have discussed a pedestrian area, to get the feedback from the businesses that we got. Cisco was represented, there were city commissioners there, Mayor Coons was there. So it was a pretty good representation of everybody. It was a very worthwhile meeting.
Kathy, just one quick question. Since I was not able to attend that meeting. What was the definition of the pedestrian area?
An area that would be closed down to vehicles. The exception that they were discussing would be, suppose there was a certain time for deliveries, and then that whole discussion went into what we've discussed before, that it's very difficult to
What
get
you're
everybody.
talking First Street down to the boardwalk is what you're
No.
saying?
No,
just around the
only
bandstand.
from the bandstand, just the
Oh,
band,
okay.
just that half block area from where the first loop is to the
Okay.
boardwalk. But anyhow, it was a chamber discussion, but we were invited to, it was very interesting. and
Dennis
it-
was there.
Yeah,
Oh, that's right, Dennis was there too, and did you find it in?
yeah, very interesting. I expected what I heard.
Yes. And it was a good way to involve the businesses in making a decision. The very last thing is my contact with city personnel, which you know that I do monthly. Following our April meeting, I sent an email. All the city personnel involved with our committee gets a copy of our minutes, but I also sent all the city personnel specific copies of things that had to do with them, such as our right turn sign, right turn only sign on Lake, trash cans, how do we go about doing that, those kinds of things. I received no response from any personnel regarding anything, nor did I receive any response that there were any updates. So that's my update from city personnel. Now, let's go to old business. Continued discussion. We had discussed the north end of the boardwalk. I presented it. Well, I didn't present it. I met with the boardwalk committee as I discussed previously in meetings. And what I got the feedback back from them was they would like a little bit more feedback from us, because what it appeared is that in order for us to back up and put a parallel bicycle path to the sidewalk at the north end of the boardwalk, that there would be approximately 6 parking spaces lost, perhaps more, because there's not enough room for a vehicle to use the right turn exit of that parking lot if you would back up the bicycle lane. Now, what I asked you to do is to retake another look at that parking lot. One of the suggestions that came from the boardwalk committee when I met with them, and that's a previous discussion, so I don't know if they've discussed it since, was taking that little island out.
That's
And if you
confusing.
took the little island out and only made the exit from that parking lot, the left-hand exit, if you want to call it that way, then that may solve some of the problem as far as parking. Now, I just need suggestions from you all, because I think the consensus is the only way to put a bicycle path at the north end of the boardwalk is to do it parallel to the sidewalk. There's no other safe way to put a path up there. So feedback from you all, I asked you to relook at that intersection.
It's a very uncomfortable space. It's not safe.
Right.
I'm not convinced that bicycles should be on that section of the boardwalk. It's narrow, you're in a pedestrian maze, and it's busy even off-season on the weekends.
But they use it anyways.
So
Yeah.
in that respect then, David, what are we talking about as a solution?
My feeling is access should begin where the boardwalk widens, where there's more space for bicycles and pedestrians to coexist.
And if I'm interpreting
That
that
would
correctly, it'd be south,
beyond the VIA.
but it's
South.
not wide there. Are you
South of
talk-
the VIA, I can't give you the exact.
Okay, because what I'm thinking is the width of the boardwalk is the same from roughly Boardwalk Plaza Hotel to.
Until the lifeguard
to-
station,
To,
just past
well,
that.
the boardwalk's wide from roughly where Victoria Plaza starts, or the Boardwalk Hotel starts, down to,
Mariners Park.
Thank you, I'm just thinking past Funland, Walter, thank you. To Mariners Court.
Park,
To Mariners Park?
that's the driving triangle. It's the north plane of the Hamilton condo.
Okay.
It would be
But-
Laurel Street, I think.
Laurel, I think, is where it narrows again.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking, right by the Star of the Sea, somewhere right by the Star of the Sea
Right.
there. So, okay, well, that's what I'm,
I sense the pedestrians are not bicycle aware. I sense the cyclists are not pedestrian aware. I see people coming and going in and out of shops without looking left or looking right. And cyclists,
how do we solve that problem?
I'm
I need
not
solutions.
necessarily in favor of having bicycles on the boardwalk at busy times. And I think the busier times are extending. The season is getting longer.
Okay,
The winter is getting shorter.
okay, I'm gonna focus
So,
us back on the topic for discussion
yes,
then. So if we would suggest not having bicycles on the north end of the boardwalk, where would you exit the bicycles so that they are not exiting at the north end of the boardwalk?
unless you can create a bike path, lane, whatever term you want to use, that segregates the cyclists from the pedestrians, which would then make it a little more identifiable. And it's not very wide to do that.
We've discussed that before, and there's all kinds of issues with that because of people using benches and coming across the boardwalk
Exactly.
and using different.
Exactly. There's a
Okay.
limited amount of real estate there, and I'm not in favor of removing revenue generating meters
Okay.
within the city limits.
Those meters are gonna be.
Okay, so if we have then from the committee,
If
whatever.
the meters are gonna go, then we have a different environment.
I need suggestions from this committee. We have a dilemma. If I'm going to go back to Boardwalk Committee and tell them our suggestion, do you have a suggestion?
I suggest we do what you do, would remove the island and just put compact cars only, designate that area there, and we'll see how it works.
And make
I
a
agree.
bicycle, and make a bicycle.
Yeah,
lane?
that's what I suggest, and then if it doesn't work, we'll reinvestigate it.
Well,
If
the
that-
one thing about putting a bicycle lane there, that you're essentially painting it.
I mean, can you, how wide is it gonna be? Is it gonna have to be, is it just gonna be the 3 feet or what?
Usually it's about 5.
Anything's
I
better
think
than
it-
what we got.
Okay, other members of the committee?
I agree. I mean, people are gonna use the bicycles on the boardwalk, whether we say that or not. You know, we might say, well, it's too narrow, but they're gonna use it.
And if we widen it like we talked about at that end, that helps there, getting people off the boardwalk. And like you say, there would be, I agree with like not losing parking if we can and that, but if taking out the island, creating more space so that we could widen it there, move the meters back, so that, and if it can only accommodate subcompact cars, that's good.
Well, I don't think that would be necessary if the island is there.
Right, you
And-
wouldn't even have
and-
to do that many.
In other words, if you had the space, you could maintain all those parking spaces. That would not
You can make more spaces.
be an issue.
Yeah.
Remove the island, take out, remove the island, move the space back. So, Dennis, and I
Yeah.
know you have a time frame this morning.
Yeah,
What is
minutes.
your thought on this?
I agree with Dan. I think the island should go, the bike path should. And you're right, it's not safe, but they're gonna use it, we just make it safer.
Well,
They're
the
gonna
other
use
thing,
it whether it's a good idea or not, so we ought to make it as safe as we can.
the other thing that David said was a good point. High traffic times. When, you know, we had this discussion a couple years ago, we should have bicycles on the boardwalk at all. And I said, why don't we stop at 9? Because I always get off at 9. It gets so busy after 9 o'clock.
Okay, but that's not part of this discussion.
We're just worried
That's
about the
not
north
part of,
end.
that's
Right.
not part of our agenda. So I'm understanding what you're saying, but I'm sticking to the agenda today. So that's not part of the agenda, that's a whole nother discussion, and it's not our purview. Bicycles on the boardwalk is the boardwalk committee's
Okay, well, one other factor about the north end was, I was talking with Frank Cole, who's on the Boardwalk Committee, and they had a concern there for safety for bicyclists at the north end, is that when people are coming from, say, Deauville Beach area, and, you know, Surf Street takes a sharp curve right there,
Right.
that there's a tendency for people to just shoot right over to the boardwalk. And that he can maybe explain better what his suggestion was, but somehow to do the curbing and encourage bicyclists not to turn left.
Well, but.
You know,
but
that can
let
be
me-
done with this project.
Right, and the only thing I'm saying right now, as far as our task, is to give information to the Boardwalk Committee from this committee on what we would suggest. And what I'm hearing from you is, one, it's not a safe place no matter what we do to it. And that if it's unsafe, can we make it safer by at least doing a parallel bicycle lane with a ramp that would lead bicyclists on and off the boardwalk with possible caution signs? That's what I'm hearing from
Good.
you. Is
Or does
that,
it become a bike walk zone?
that would be I mean,
If there's not an identifiable bike lane, then to me, that perhaps that one's, particularly in front of the Henlopen Hotel, the condominium, maybe that should be a walk your bike area, just like we discussed behind the museum.
if that is the case and bicycles are not allowed on the sidewalks, then why would the bike walk zone not start at the sidewalk? I mean, I'm only just looking
I
at the
agree.
big picture of things.
I agree with that.
We have all these backup options, it seems. If
Yes.
this one doesn't work to begin with, there remain problems, then we can suggest
Can-
instituting other things.
Can you make that suggestion that we just did and try it? Remove the island and widen it?
I can make, our job is to make suggestions, whether it's implemented or not, or how the city perceives it and what they choose to do with our suggestion. That becomes as you know, with everything we do, that becomes their issue. But what I'm hearing is that seems, if the island needs to be removed in order not to lose parking places, et cetera, and perhaps nothing will happen this season. This is a suggestion that just goes into the queue.
Kathy, for
So-
clarification, the island. The park is an island and the split at the end.
It's
For
this,
the purpose of the minutes, could it say the island at the end, at the north end of the sidewalk?
that would be perfect. And I understand, thank you, I'd forgotten about the other island. Okay, what I'm hearing then, and what I will suggest to both the city and to the park and to the Boardwalk Committee, is that our first suggestion would be to remove the island and simply put a painted bicycle designated path parallel to the sidewalk, so, and a new ramp, which may mean that the handicap place needs to be moved from the end that's right there by the Henlopen until the first place that's a handicap parking space may need to be moved in order to put a ramp. That would be our first suggestion. That if that suggestion cannot be implemented, the minimal suggestion would be to make it a walk your bicycle zone. Is that what I'm understanding from you all?
Sounds good to me.
That's what I thought I
Yeah.
heard.
Okay,
Yeah.
moving on. Are there are there citizen comments having to do with this topic? Go ahead, Dennis, thank you.
Frank Cole, 24 Wilmington. We talked about this at length at the last Beach and Boardwalk Committee meeting. I'm only talking because Gary was on vacation, but the committee chair wanted to kind of encapsulate all of our thoughts on this issue. So I don't want to try to cover everything that we discussed involving this, but there were a few points. First off, the committee members did not feel that a walk your wheels idea for the last block of the boardwalk was practicable. I just didn't think there would be any compliance, or thought it kind of went against human nature. So the area just north of the Henlopen Hotel, which I think is called what, Surfside Place? Is that the official name? parking lot. The, most committee members felt that that whole area needs to be revamped, redesigned. And furthermore, the biggest safety issue that we saw, and this is not really in our purview because it's definitely on the street, was the dangerous kind of hairpin turn where Surf Avenue becomes Lake, and with people crossing there, bicyclists kind of cutting across there to go into that parking lot. We just saw much greater possibility of tragedy there than we did anything involving the north end of the boardwalk and the exit by the Henlopen Hotel.
Okay. Okay.
Alter Birmingham, 23 Hamilton Avenue. Lived in this area a long, long time, watch what's happened up there, summer, winter. If you want to take out the triangle, the split at the north end of the sidewalk at the Hamilton Hotel, to take it down, to remove the structural part of it, I don't see a problem with that. But a couple identified items. When you come from Lake Gerard Bridge and come up to the Henlopen and come around to the left, you can go left or right. He just turned the mic on. There is a necessity to leave that there. One of the biggest problems, people come from the north on Surf Avenue, come south, they go around the corner, and they turn right into the face of the two do not enter signs all the time. So it needs to be divided. That division there serves a very useful purpose. So when people are looking for a parking space, they go round and round and round, and they go around 2 or 3 times, and then they come out to the right and go over to Oak, Pennsylvania, et cetera, to look for a parking space. So that division is important. It could be a painted intersection, if you want to call it that. If you want a place for the bicycles, et cetera, on the front, and you need to remember, if you came from Lake Gerard Bridge and came down beside the Henlopen, there is room when you make a left, and you often see people sitting there on the right or the left waiting for someone to back out. There is room for somebody to sit there waiting for a parking space, and also for somebody else to pass by on the left or right. So if you decided to move the sidewalk back or paint an extra line in there for the bicycles, there's probably room enough to do it. The biggest problem is that so many people come off of Surf Avenue from the north, and they come down, and the bicycles come right into the face of the two do not enter signs and go down the street the wrong way. And our police department does nothing about it because we're supposed to be nice to everybody. I've discussed this with the chief, but there needs to be enough policemen out there to make it safer, because most people think they don't have to obey the laws because this is a vacation community. And there needs to be an attitude of enforcement, and they actually tell you where to go and what to do. So, but if you pulled back and made the sidewalk a bicycle, whatever you do, if you pull the parking space back on the ocean front, then you need to put abutments so people cannot drive up into the bicycle lane and or the sidewalk. You need to have the markings on the sidewalk that one piece is no bicycles. And then you have to go back down to the corner at Henlopen Condo and where the boardwalk ends. So when you come down there, you have to decide whether bicycles, as you come off the boardwalk on the north end, is it going to be bicycles on the left or on the right? And I do believe what you're talking about, walking your bicycles at that point, because you have the congestion of all the people coming out of that street, crossing onto the crossover to go to the beach, carrying all their beach gear and everything. So walking would be much, much better. I think an overall check would be fine, but we have had in the past, not griping to the chief of police, parking meter division is very effective. That raised island that they have the triangle at the end, they never paint the wood, and the sand comes up there and blows over if it's painted and yellow, and they give tickets. So it would be, if it was removed, notwithstanding a few signposts, it would be easier to clean off for sand when we have storms and everything, and snow and items of that nature. But it needs a comprehensive look with an overview that you can sit here and look at it and see it up on the board or have it big enough that everybody can sit around the table and offer suggestions. You're thinking the right way, but there are too many people going down the street the wrong way and too many people trying to come out the small end of the funnel. Thank you.
Other comments on this topic from the audience?
Pretty well covered.
Paul Coons, Stokely Street. What I would suggest is, on the sidewalk on the north side of the Henlopen, just put decals on there, no bikes allowed, just on the sidewalk. On the north corner of the Henlopen, I'd put a sharrow that says you go out into the parking lot, and then put a sharrow in the parking lot to go up Surf. As you're coming from the parks, just like there's no do not enter for cars, there should be a do not enter for bicycles sign right there. And sharrow should take people along Lake, and if they want to go onto the boardwalk, you take a left right in front of the Henlopen, and then take a left onto Grenoble to get onto the boardwalk, so that the south traffic starts on the boardwalk on Grenoble, the north gets off at the ramp. That way there's no construction to be done, there's just a few decals.
Stencils, are we talking stencils?
You're talking stencils.
Decals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There being no other citizen comments, let's move on to new business.
Sorry,
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no,
my
you
bad.
need to come.
An issue about.
I need for you to give me your
Suzanne
name.
Good, 1 Grove Street. The issue about the traffic circle leaving town.
We're not on that topic yet.
Oh, this is, sorry.
That's okay.
That'll be later.
We're getting there. It's
Pedestrian
coming up and there's an agenda right there in front of you so you can see where
to know
it's,
when, yeah,
where
okay,
it's coming
okay.
up.
I was
Thank you
worried
so
that was the
very
end of
much.
Public comments, but sorry about that.
No, that's okay. We're taking them after each item and we're doing that one right now. Because it's the first new business item. We were asked to consider putting a no left turn sign when exiting Rural Farms onto Columbia Avenue. And the concern about that is that we discussed this very briefly, which is why it's on the new agenda item last month, is because that's a very tight turn. And if a car is coming from the circle onto Columbia Avenue, they don't have any way of knowing that a car is going to be pulling out of Royal Farms, and it all happens very quickly. So once again, the committee was asked to look at this intersection and to give me your feedback regarding what you think we could do. Chief Banks, would you like to wait? I'm sorry, because you can do public comment also, so you need to let me know.
Well, I don't like to jump in here before you guys
You
just
just
talk
jump
about
in.
it. However, my understanding from the sign shop that a sign, no left turn, will go up after Memorial Day.
On
Columbia Avenue coming out the backside of Royal Farms.
no left turn?
Yeah,
So that's already in the works.
it will be.
Check that out.
It's already been approved by the city manager, and I talked to Bill Maffei from the sign shop this morning and was advised that it was on hold till after Memorial Day because he was trying to get meters up and going.
Okay, thank you so much. Then that has been,
I know there's additional comments from Mr. Brennan when you get to that, add about maybe besides the no left-hand turn, a barrel or something else for some safety issues. I don't know if you want him to jump in or whatever. I'm just saying so you didn't go too far in the weeds that we're moving forward with it. The
and
city
we
is.
will, then if that's the end of our discussion on that, then we'll let the public comment.
It's important that you address, Chief is being very nice, and there was discussion, I guess the chief was present for, better for him to tell us about, that the mayor made a decision that that sign would be put up as you're coming out of that parking lot, a no left turn sign. And so originally came from the mayor, a decision, I believe, you'll have to let the chief decide that. But nonetheless, I don't know why this comes up again, because the discussion was beforehand and you sent it to the commissioners, and that now is coming back to you. And I did not get the latest from the chief that it's not going to happen but there is an easier way to do this. And that parking lot on the west end of the Royal Farm Store is a city parking lot. And when you come around the corner, that corner is a property line, and there's a sign there, the city knows that. But instead of waiting another month, this month of May, to put up a sign is kind of stupid. But when you come around, the sign is not going to stop the problem. The people are coming around, accelerating as they're going around the corner. They can't see what's coming. There's cars sitting there. The way to solve this, having looked at it again, is putting barrels there, short barrels, because there's no signs that say slow. It's almost like speed up as you go around the corner, headed towards the ocean. And if at the end of the tongue where you come around, a Jersey barrier was set there, something that, not that they can run into, that they wouldn't run into, to send people up, whether you use a 4 or 8 foot one, up the street, which is city property. And that back corner at the Royal Farm Store is, and I know that property well, but if you put 1 or 2 Jersey barriers up there, you could do it temporarily with barrels. It would have a tendency immediately of slowing things down. Then the other problem you have is people come down Columbia Avenue and pull into the back corner of the Royal Farm Store, just about where those cars are coming out. And I believe that is city property, and you could paint it all, no parking. So when people came around out of the back of the parking lot, on the left would be a Jersey barrier, would stop that person from making a left turn. You can't go putting a sign up there without making it wide enough that people can see it, but it needs to be also not so wide that the trucks going in and anybody going around the corner on the inside don't hit the sign and knock it down.
Okay, I need just a clarification, because just for my own information, behind the laundromat, that whole property behind the Royal Farms on Columbia Avenue, is that entire parking lot city property?
If you can imagine Rehoboth Avenue and normal 50 by 100 lots, there's a multiple of 50 by 100 rectangular lots that come down Rehoboth Avenue. On the back of the platform of what I call the Lewis Dairy Market, Royal Farm Store, when you come out of here, this piece of triangle that goes up to Sussex Street, this piece of triangle all belongs to this property.
Okay.
Okay, but from the corner of the pavement all the way up to the sign, everything to the left is city right away.
Okay.
So the problem is when people are coming out, going around that corner, they, as they go around the corner, they are still on city road. It's easy to solve, but not putting up the sign, waiting to put up the sign. The post that was put up there last time we discussed it with Mr. Sullivan about 2 years ago was put the wrong place.
What?
It's the no left is not the problem. It's the people that are making the U-turn and the turning radius. They can't get around. Look at the chief said they can't get around, so they stop both lanes, and then they're sitting there about to be T-boned from somebody coming around the corner.
Okay, thank you. And then did you want to?
I'll wait until letter, sort of DE,
Okay,
but thank you.
got it. Okay, consider, now, the letter B is almost in conjunction with what we suggested last month with the right turn only coming out of Lake. These are kind of in conjunction with each other because during busy times of the year. So I'm on letter B, consider the right turn only at the intersection of Christian and Rehoboth Avenue. And we had also discussed that these would only be during the season. The season being, actually we looked at the season as whenever the no left turn signs are up, which they are currently. Whenever those signs go up, then these no left turn signs should go up.
And
So,
no right on red.
and no rights on red, correct. So whenever the signage comes up to change vehicle rules, all of them should go up at the same time. Thoughts on this intersection? Is there any further discussion about that, or do we as a committee want to recommend that the right turn only sign go up on Christian Street? Everybody?
I agree, yes, seasonal,
Okay.
just parallel to Lake.
I disagree.
I don't like it either.
Because, when you're in South Rehoboth, how are you going to get out of town, or how do you, you know, it's, those of us who live in South Rehoboth know we can take Munson down to the circle, okay, to get on Rehoboth Avenue. And we know other ways to do it, but I think of tourists who are renting and aren't familiar with town. What are they going to do if they can't make a left-hand turn there at Christian and Rehoboth?
They're gonna turn right, go half a block and make a U-turn.
Yeah.
And then you have that, and then, but are people even aware that there are all those turn options on Rehoboth Avenue?
My feeling is that that U-turn is safer than the pedestrian issues that we have crossing. That sidewalk on Rehoboth Avenue on the south side is very crowded. Just like we had with Lake, the cars have to come very far out to execute to get across. So they're way beyond the crosswalk and or blocking the crosswalk or stacked up with one car out into the street and one car behind and people weaving between the cars trying to get heading east on Rehoboth Avenue as a pedestrian. It gets really crowded. So I'm worried about people getting hit by cars. There's a lot of traffic up and down that avenue, particularly in the evenings on the weekends. And that street has the same problem that Lake has. And the escape path is really close. The alternate is not very far at all.
The other problem is like getting out on Rehoboth Avenue, and then you have to get into the left lane
that's the
too,
problem.
you know, and to make that turn. So.
If you have a gap to get on the avenue, you have a gap to move over and make a U-turn.
No, you can have somebody in each lane.
If you're gonna turn right with someone in the other lane, then that's one thing. Generally, people make relatively wide turns, and generally people wait until there's a gap. They don't turn a hard right, they turn a soft right.
Well, let me just, because I want us just, I mean, this was a suggestion. What I'm hearing things from both of you. The concern that we brought this back to this committee to consider is because of safety issues. It wasn't whether or not people were being patient or where people were going to turn around. That wasn't the issue as to why this was brought. It was brought primarily because of the safety issues with an intersection, and I just want to focus on that part of it, because if you pull out of Christian Street and try to make a left turn in the little narrow left turn lane, and you don't see the car coming on Rehoboth Avenue eastbound, or you get halfway out in the intersection and now you have more than one car coming eastbound, let alone pedestrians and people trying to cross the street there. So rather than worry about where they're going to turn, our business is the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists and whomever else is using our city streets. Is it safer for us to recommend a right turn only sign at Christian Street and Rehoboth Avenue than it would be not to suggest it? That's, I just need to know.
Didn't the chief have an opinion on this last one?
I don't know. Chief Banks, do you have an opinion on this?
We're fortunate that we have the advantage of a professional that does this 24/7, 365.
Well, professional, that's a strong word, but again, first thing we're always going to look at is accident-related data, and there's very little to zero there without pulling it directly up. I just know there isn't any. Now, is it crowded just like so many other intersections in town where you have to go out? Yes. The problem you have when you cut across a Christian Street there, you want to make a left, but you can't see the cars coming because the parking spaces are right there. However, I can say the same thing if I'm coming westbound and I'm turning at Lake that we spoke about last month. And also, you know, as far as an opinion, it's difficult to make one right now because I need to go off the facts and data on why you're doing it. Is there a safety concern there now? No, but is there a lot of near misses? Absolutely. And but if you go with that philosophy, that's most intersections throughout town. So I don't know that we can automatically just stop it. But yes, we want to make things better. But are we going to create more? In my opinion, when Rehoboth Avenue did the streetscape, a lot of the U-turns aren't wide enough. You back traffic up, just like at first and second block intersections, and all because people that want to make the left-hand turns. So it is tight fit on some of those U-turns. So I don't know if you'll be, it's one of those things, nothing wrong with trying it, but you'd have to wait and see what the end result is, because you are going to cause a problem one way or the other. So do you just continue with status quo and try to make sure it's safe? And right now it is somewhat safe because there's no accident data to say that. But you have to take your time and be cautious.
I like his answer.
It's a lot of words for nothing. I don't know that I can recommend a complete change, because you have to be cautious no matter which way you decided to go. That's what it comes down
As
to.
far as pedestrian safety, even if you're gonna make a right turn, you have to pull across that crosswalk. You have to pull out there because of the parked cars, and you're blocking that crosswalk. So it's the same problem, and it's just you've got a better chance of making your turn if you're going right than if you have to cross both lanes of traffic. But I think as far as pedestrian safety, it's not gonna make a real difference,
So what is the wish of the committee?
Can I just summarize what he said? I think if we get rid of the left turn, we're creating more U-turns. Is that true?
That's bad, yeah.
Okay, so at this point, the committee does not recommend the right turn sign. Is that what I'm hearing?
You're hearing the status quo.
Well, we didn't vote.
Well, So the way that I am reporting this is that at this time, there is no recommendation to make this change.
Should we vote on that?
Can I just make a comment?
No, not before we vote.
That's out of order.
All those in favor?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. You said before you vote that you'll allow citizen comment.
I don't know that I said that, but Gary, if you want to say something, come say something.
I just think the most dangerous part is the crosswalk. You need to move it so that when you're looking left at the oncoming traffic, the crosswalk's on the other corner. That's all I was.
Okay.
Just be aware, we talked about that.
But moving the crosswalk would be a lot more difficult than putting a no left turn.
It's a big job.
So
It's a big job. Yeah. I can't tell you how many people I see almost hit walking at that crosswalk.
Well, I'm making sure to make note of your comment though, Gary. Just
I agree with you.
move the crosswalk and then we remove some of the problem. Okay.
And you've all covered that.
Yeah. All right. Now, so if we, John has called for a vote. All those in favor of not recommending the right turn sign?
Not recommended.
Of not recommending it, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, 3. All those in favor of the right turn sign, say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
Me too. Just for general principles. So it's 3, 1,
1 to 2.
and 2. Okay, so I have the vote taken correctly. Okay. Moving on to the next item, removing the stop sign at Maryland Avenue and 2nd Street. Donna, you want to speak to this because you brought this up?
Yeah, I often to get across town, from north to south, south to north, you either have to use 1st Street or 2nd Street, okay? And it's a lot safer using 2nd Street. So, and I noticed using 2nd Street to get across town, whether it's on bike or car, after you cross Rehoboth Avenue and you're heading north, you go by the post office, you go by Baltimore, and then at Maryland, there's a 4-way stop sign. Okay, so when you're on 2nd, you have to stop there at that 4-way sign. Then you just go another short block to Olive, there's another stop sign, okay? Now, whenever I'm going there and I have to stop on 2nd Street, there's really not much traffic, at that intersection, and the people coming from Maryland and from Lake, they have to stop. But it interrupts the flow of traffic. I think it slows down and interrupts the flow of traffic on 2nd when we want to help move that traffic along. And so I think if we just took out the stop signs on 2nd Street, so that people taking 2nd can just take that short distance and just drive on down to the stop sign on Olive.
Since I live there.
Southeast stop sign.
Pardon me?
Call it the southeast stop sign because there's 4 stop signs there.
Yes, okay.
I totally don't want to get rid of that. I loved it when they put them back in. I use it about 5, 6 times a day. It's so dangerous there. I almost get hit all the time.
At Maryland?
Right there,
Right.
that stop sign. I
And
take my bike there to get my mail. I take there for my bike ride. I take it when I go to the gym. I mean, I'm there all the time at that
But you're
thing.
saying
So
there's
let-
problem
so
now,
let-
even with the stop sign.
They don't stop, and we don't know who's supposed to stop there, and it's really, to make that left turn, or even going through it, it's awful.
Okay, so you recommended removing it and give us reasons why. Dan's saying he has another perspective and he would like to keep it. Other committee feedback.
I'm with him.
Me too.
It's really terrible.
Okay,
They
and I'm
used
with
to
him
have-
too, only because I almost got hit at that intersection by somebody that was coming up the one-way street and was going to try to cross and didn't even pay attention that I was there. They barely looked before they were ready to scoot across the street, coming from.
Crossing Second,
Cross-
coming from that.
coming up Maryland, coming from the parking lot there and coming across Maryland, where they're trying to go toward the beach.
Right.
They didn't even barely slow down at their stop sign. I mean, if I had not stopped, if people don't stop at that intersection, the people coming the other way just go right on.
I think part of the problem are the shrubberies there. There's a lot of shrubberies there on the west side of Second Street, so that people approaching from that area, from the west, can't see people on Second Street.
Well,
And that's,
as a committee then, am I hearing that we do not want to recommend this either?
Correct.
Right.
Correct, we should keep it.
Okay, all those in favor of not recommending removal of the stop sign, say aye.
Aye.
no.
I just want to be sure we have everybody accounted for. All right, consider suggestions for lighting on the circle. David, this is, and Walter had given us an explanation at the end of our previous meeting about how that lighting changed. So part of my communication was the city was what we needed to do could the city just provide your bulbs? I did not hear back from them. So I can only tell you I can bring this to their attention again. But as far as did anybody want to talk about the stop sign at Maryland and Second Street? Okay, would anybody like to talk about the street lighting at this circle? Because Walter, you had given us a really good summary last month
Thank you,
about.
Walker Brigham, 123 Hamilton Avenue. Rise Up is now about to open. Rise Up, the old 7-Eleven, had turned their lights off. They are now back on. And I have been trying to get up with the owner, because I didn't expect we would get anything done from the city about looking at the lights coming in town at this point in time. But if Rise Up will leave their lights on 24 hours a day rather than close down at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, then most of the situation will have been solved. Because the lights that they have on their parking lot, although they are down lights, fully now, especially with the whiteness of their building, actually light up the hole coming into Rehoboth.
Okay.
I will check back once I find out what they say, but it might not be necessary to do anything unless they intend to turn their lights off at night. And maybe they could be persuaded to leave them on for advertising and public safety. And because it's not the time now to be going out and doing a lighting study and putting up new lights with the work on the canal bridge and everything that's going on.
Thank you.
Before we move on from this topic,
Yeah, I'm not. We're still on this topic.
oh, good.
That's okay.
I know.
Because I just wanted to be sure Walter had knowledge of this previously, and I wanted to
Okay.
be sure we consider that.
I guess my biggest concern about the traffic circle is
Does it have to do with lighting? If
safety.
it does not
How
have
about
to do
safety?
with we're talking about lighting. That's all we're talking
I
about.
think we really need to improve lighting if there's going to be a lot of pedestrians crossing there for clear space. I think we definitely need to do that. We need to do whatever we can to make that a less dangerous situation.
Okay, the thing is with lighting, am I hearing from this committee that we are concerned about the lighting at the circle being consistently a safe place for pedestrians?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
then that is the way that I will report it back to the city, that we want to be sure that there is sufficient lighting at the circle area to be a safe place for pedestrians.
Yes.
Okay.
My issue is sort of related to that in that the shrubbery, should I talk now or wait until, okay. Suzanne Good, 1 Grove Street. Both my husband and I have actually written to Sharon Lynn and got some very positive feedback from her that, in fact, that should be probably something that the Streets Committee could help with or look at. Our issue is that, I mean, I've lived in the DC area, Boston, and in Europe. Of course, in Europe, the rules are different. Those entering the circle actually have the right of way. But in the US, we're looking at this circle with the shrubbery along the island, and cars going westbound on Rehoboth Avenue, exiting town, due to the shrubs, which are on to the left of the left-hand lane, they have a totally obstructed view of those who are in the circle. I know this because my husband and I, and now, for better or worse, our teenager who took driver's ed in 2018 at Sussex Central High School, good course, but didn't prepare him. What's happening repeatedly, if you're like ourselves in the circle trying to get home from having been out on Route 1, the cars going westbound, see, the lighting is so trivial or just so unremarkable that their view is so obscured by those hedges, they don't even realize when a car has the right of way who's coming around the circle. Constant honking on the part of people in the circle, I refrain from it, but because the cars on Rehoboth Avenue going westbound just barrel into the circle, it's as though they're not even cognizant that they're dealing with a traffic circle. For instance, even the rotaries, those horrible rotaries in Boston, make it clearer to the driver that you're approaching some sort of traffic circle. They call them rotaries in Boston, I'm not even sure why. But if you're in DC on Massachusetts Avenue, there are multiple traffic circles. Now, they are a larger scale than our Rehoboth circle, but there's no doubt or there's no lack of clarity that you're dealing with a traffic circle. I'd say almost 10% of the time, possibly more, that I'm in the circle trying to get home, 1 or 2 cars who are on Rehoboth Avenue going westbound, particularly if it's a late afternoon and a lot of people leaving town, just barrel right into the circle. They don't realize that I have the right of way. And I've seen people get very upset when it's summer or spring when their windows are open. They'll be screaming at the person who failed to yield to them when they were in the circle and had the right of way. We're not traffic experts, but frankly, we are worried that whoever designed that circle did not do a great job, and we're hoping enough people have had the similar experience to us, and Sharon Lynn has acknowledged that it may be a problem. Those hedges are strangely placed because they prevent people from realizing that they're approaching a traffic circle. Somehow if you're coming into the city going eastbound, the cars in the circle already are easier to see. There are no hedges. So that doesn't seem to be the issue. And our proposal is to put a full-on stop sign on Rehoboth Avenue as you enter the traffic circle, because the yield is clearly not being even noticed by most people.
Kathy, I
Okay,
just
we're
want
off
to,
topic. Yeah, we're off topic.
point of order.
And that's okay. I was just gonna let you finish your statement, but
Sorry,
we're
thank you.
talking about lighting only.
Well, I wasn't sure whether this should be raised at, at number 8 or at the traffic circle lighting, which is
Well,
sort
we
of
can-
part and parcel.
We can do, I need to restrict conversation at this meeting to street lighting at the circle specifically. I'm just trying to keep us on,
Can we put that on next month?
well,
Hang
let's
on a
right
second.
now,
Walter
we'll
Brittingham.
discuss that in
Let's
just a minute.
change the word to lighting, not street lighting, because the issue is visibility.
Okay,
And the problem is that as the roses and everything grow up in the course of the summer, the city refuses to have the roses cut down so that the roses obscure headlights coming from the opposite direction, but that you can see a car coming from the opposite direction. It tremendously affects the people crossing at that crosswalk because people can't see, but the Roses have taken priority to safety, and they won't do it until the fall when Sposato says it's okay to take it down.
You're right.
Okay, so I'm back to the committee with, I'm going to suggest to the city that the lighting at the circle needs to be looked at, and it needs to be sufficient for both vehicle and pedestrian safety after dark.
Good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We need one more street lamp. We're short a street lamp down there.
Well, then that,
Could
they
you
have to, and
And
we
Rise
can-
Up is gonna be the answer, as Walter suggested,
Well-
because to get a street lamp put in there is what I would consider to be a long-term, if never, project.
Well, my feeling is right now we're looking at lighting. It's not, I'm not an electrician, I'm not a lighting expert. If the city is aware that we are concerned about the lighting and it needs to be looked at, then that's the information I'm gonna give back to them.
Could you just possibly pass on that visibility in general
Well-
there is a critical issue?
And that can be part and parcel. Okay, last one. Letter E. Bicycle and pedestrian safety on Surf Avenue. Now, I have to give a little background on this because Surf Avenue has been an issue for at least 10 years. And there have been numerous questions, suggestions. There has been suggested take all the parking off of Surf Avenue because that just makes a problem. I'm giving you everything that's been suggested in the past. It has been suggested to pave Surf Avenue, so at least you have a paved surface on both sides of Surf Avenue that makes it safer for pedestrians and bicycles. It was, the city at one point was talking about doing some kind of study of Surf Avenue, that someone else was gonna come in and take a look at Surf Avenue. To my knowledge, that was never done. So given that background, what would you like me to communicate to the city as far as issues on Surf Avenue?
One more piece of background, wasn't Surf Avenue widened on the beach side?
Just the beach
I
side.
thought it was,
think.
but they didn't want to make it a bike lane, but they did widen it.
When it was paved?
Yes, when it was paved.
Yes.
Wasn't the issue on the other side where it's not paved?
There's
Wasn't
issues on
that-
both sides.
Both sides.
There's bicycle issues and pedestrian issues, stroller issues, wagon issues. It's not, there's no room for people and cars on that section of the street. From the Henlopen Hotel to the stop sign should be no parking, and they should be identifiable sidewalks / pedestrian / bike lanes to make it safer there, because there's so much activity going to the ramp to get out to the beach.
It has
So-
a narrow sidewalk
so-
there, doesn't it? The sidewalk's
It
not-
would have to
doesn't
be
accommodate
Well,
it.
it doesn't.
painted onto the street. But if you go down Ocean Drive toward North Shores, it's pedestrian and bicycle, and everyone coexists quite nicely. Both sides of the street. If Surf Avenue were the same way, if it continued into the city the same way, safer pedestrians, safer for bicycles, to me, that's not revenue generating metered parking space. That's tags and sticker space. And in deferring to safety there, I believe we should eliminate the parking on Surf. Half of it's already gone. From the hotel up to the entrance to the beach is already gone. There's no parking there. It's to continue it further. It would be nice to make the street wider. It would be nice to take some of the right of way on the west side and make the street wider. But we've got a problem there with the cars, and it's just really narrow. The cars that are parked.
No, I'm not disagreeing. This is not a new topic for me.
Right.
Now.
Not a new
How many times have you gone through it, Kathy?
I have been through Surf Avenue more than once. The only thing that I would say is I will be more than happy to take back to the city as a recommendation from this committee that Surf Avenue needs to be looked at as a place that is unsafe for bicycles, pedestrians, and vehicles. So somebody's gotta not be on Surf Avenue in order for somebody else to be able to go on. I mean, I'll be more than happy to take it back to them and let them know. As I said before, we have suggested more than one solution. And they all have their issues, let's put it that way.
And it seems it relates to that issue where people are coming from Surf and want to turn onto the boardwalk, like, that's about the same area there.
Did we get any statistics from DelDOT about the numbers of bicycles? We know what they were in 2017. We haven't heard what, but is it safe to assume that the number of bicycles is going up?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, I would, no, I have no statistics to prove that. But in the big scheme of things, by observation from any of us who have been on bicycles, there's a lot more bicycles. So let me go, so what I'm going to recommend, what I'm going to say is that this committee is concerned about Surf Avenue, and that suggestions may be eliminating parking, paving, changing the width, but something needs to be done in order to make it safer for pedestrians and bicycles. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, the cost-effective way is to eliminate the cars and restripe. There's no paving involved. It's simple. It's be safe, keep it simple, keep it affordable.
Okay.
And then if we can make it wider, there's a lot of, but all that thing gets involved and takes time.
Okay, so I'm doing parking, removing the parking first and restripe. Paving would be second. Expanding the width of it, if there's any way possible, would be the third. Am I on track
That would
with
be really nice.
suggestion?
Yeah, that's 1, 2, 3.
Okay,
And
then,
we're just sort of suggesting that one block.
no.
From the, no?
Surf Avenue, from the time you get on Surf Avenue changes. And that's the part of the issue with Surf Avenue. You turn the corner there at the Henlopen Hotel and you have a bike lane. No, it's not a designated bike lane. You have
It's a de
no
facto bike lane.
parking, you have a no parking lane for, I don't know the distance, because I'm
Yeah.
not good at
They
distances.
wouldn't make it a bike lane.
But then all of a sudden, at Oak, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Walter. I thought I had it right. All of a sudden then, there's permit parking on both sides of the street. And so it's on westbound, east and westbound have permit parking. At some points on that street, east and westbound have permit parking.
Yeah, it's really.
So you run into a situation and then the westbound side of Surf Avenue is not paved. So you have the whole issue there, but I'm going to take to the city, remove parking first, because we're concerned about safety, paving it and changing the width. And
Kathy, just from my perspective, since Surf Avenue has been on our agenda forever, for as long as I can remember now, I would like to see it characterized with the city that we want to take a fresh look with whatever all the options are relevant to Surf Avenue.
Good.
okay, got it. All right.
Wait a minute, we have a comment.
Comments, absolutely.
Keep it very short.
Walter Birmingham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. When you come around the corner at the Henlopen, you have, as Kathy says, a marked lane, but it's not designated. You did want. Come all the way up to Oak Avenue, you have a bump out. You just need to remember that everything happens on the right-hand side of the road is subject to regulations by DNREC. Any bumps or anything, even the bank was reinforced by core logs, sand to hold the sand back. And then if you get further up past, right after the city manager came on board, we tried to explain to her, didn't compute, that when you get ready to go down like Deauville Beach, you need to have places set aside, an area to unload on each side of the entrance to the beach. And I'm saying room for the car to park and the room for them to open their hatchbacks and everything to get their stuff off. But they are.
Referring to the crosswalk
we're now
at
headed
Deauville
towards-
Beach,
we're
the
now
crosswalk?
At the crosswalk.
I mean at the wooden walkway to the beach.
Yes, ma'am.
Not down at the
But
Deauville
when you
Park.
get down there,
Okay.
that's one place there is to park, so the people park at the entrance to the crosswalk, and they block things. So if you can imagine going the rest of the way down the street towards 300 Ocean Drive, whatever you want to call it, the cars parked there, and that line, if, I think that's state of Delaware lease that, if we could move the parking area over to the right, then there could be a designated lane there also, because that's on the ocean side and that's not up by the sand, which they are so worried about regulated. We could draw this out in 2 minutes. Problem is, the other side of the street, that is from Park Avenue down to Henlopen, is not going to have any change at all because it's only got a 4-foot wide grass spot. So that's going to be no parking. Coming around from the Henlopen, going towards Henlopen Acres, there's already no parking on the side, on the right-hand side, all the way up to the bump out, which the state has previously said you can't take that away. But then if you change your whole line of thinking and turn around the corner from the Henlopen, and you've got the first block there is now marked no parking. You can stand there and park and look at the ocean, but you can't park there. You get into the next block, it's 43 foot from the sidewalk out to the edge of the traveled way. And I've said it for years, and I just said the hell with it after a while. But go in there with the front end loader in the winter and the state's cooperation and take out the concrete and move the damn roadway over so that you can have parking on the west side of the street as you go north. And then you'll have room on the right-hand side for parking maybe, but at a marked way all the way down to Deauville Beach. And keep all your parking, God help you take parking revenue, because you are getting money for it in the form of a parking permit, and it would cost a lot of money, but you can fix it once. But you've been on this now for 10 years. It's not your fault. It's the fact there will always be something that the city needs money more for. And here we are, 15 May, talking about it's still not enough. Thank you.
Okay, now, we have I'm sorry, Gary.
Gary Glass, 105 Country Club Drive. Just consider doing a one-way street and putting in a bona fide bicycle lane if it's becoming too crowded. Just consider it. I think they need to.
Surf, you mean?
Surf. I think they need to look at the whole city and plan the flow of traffic. And I think there's other streets in the city that could probably benefit greatly with regards to safety and traffic movement efficiently. If we took a look at the traffic flow and looked at one-way streets, I think it would make it a lot safer maybe.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, we have a scheduled meeting on June 7 at 10:30. I am looking at future agendas. I have no updates from the city this month. I don't know where we are with suggestions that we've made previously. For Dan and Donna, that was part of my update at the beginning. I requested some information. I never got any updates back from any city personnel. So as we're looking, it seems to me we have a couple of options. We have a June meeting scheduled. If there's no significant agenda for that meeting, we can certainly not have that meeting and move to September. Are there specific agenda items you feel are necessary to be covered at the June meeting?
Tony, did you want to bring up temporary to do something with signage? Or has that already been discussed and we're just waiting and not getting any response from the city?
I don't think that the possibility of temporary signage for this season is on the able things to do.
Well, I don't know.
And Dan, the only thing I will tell you is just because you did come in just a couple minutes late, and I don't know what you heard and what you didn't. The city is well aware of every piece of signage we have suggested since the first month we met. I will give an example as the signage that Chief Banks mentioned today that is supposed to go up at the end of May. I was never given notification that that signage was going to be put up. So I consistently give you information that I am given by the city.
Well, I think I think what Dan's referring to, and one I'd like to add in there, things may evolve here in the month that would be important issues that we might want a June meeting. So, and it's, I guess, you're wondering if Merge might be able to give some feedback to the city by June, but my concern is that about the clear space situation. If, whatever happens with that, how that may affect traffic, especially at the traffic circle, and if that's anything this committee would want to think about or.
My feeling is this is just my observation. That is an issue that once we know what the issue is that we may need to address, we can certainly put it on an agenda.
I think it may evolve this month. I think some developments are probably likely to get resolved, so it could be an issue that we know where things are heading this month.
All right, well,
So-
let me do this. I must know an agenda within 10 days, at least within 10 days of the June meeting. If I do not have an agenda that one of you has sent to me by May 28th, I'll pick a date, May 25th, May 28th. I'm gonna say May 25th for my own convenience, to be sure that I get things done in a timely manner. If I have not been given an agenda item by May 25th by a member of this committee, or by a citizen that brings something to me that feels critical that needs to be done, I am calling off the June 7th meeting.
Well, let's talk about the stop sign instead of the yield. I think that's a very important thing that you brought up.
May I include it now in?
I've almost been hit there, but both lanes coming at me.
Yeah, it's 2 lanes. It's actually the one that's closer to,
Well-
yeah. So should I make that comment now? I had another additional thing about worrying about clear space, where I feel we should worry about current pedestrians rather than these hypothetical 2 to 3 years from now. Yes, their safety is paramount too, but I feel like we're putting too much emphasis on a hypothetical scenario rather than dealing with the pedestrian safety here and now.
Okay, what I want to do is this. And I guess that's what I'm going to do. I am going to report back that with the lighting at the traffic circle, that there is a concern about the traffic circle. The traffic circle has been an issue since the day the traffic circle opened up to traffic.
Absolutely.
That is not a new issue. My concern right now is, and Chief Banks will tell you this because we've discussed the traffic circle previously, there are no statistics to prove that the traffic circle is a dangerous traffic circle.
0 recorded accidents.
No
We-
incidents?
0 recorded accidents.
Wow.
The only accident at the traffic circle was a vehicle coming out of Columbia Avenue that was merging onto Rehoboth Avenue and ran into the back of the car in front of them that was also merging that didn't move fast enough for them. That's the only accident that's reported at the traffic circle since the time the traffic circle's been open, to my knowledge from Chief Banks reporting to us previously.
That's not true.
Okay, well, I'm only,
No, I'm just telling you,
thank you.
it's not true. They're recorded, whether they remember them, there are. That then at the traffic circle, had vehicles turned over behind the dairy store, Royal Farm Store, they have vehicles turned over. Just because they're not recorded, that does not mean they did not exist.
So there's no recorded incidents.
But I think what my previous meetings and what I know right now, the traffic circle is not a reported incident. I understand that we've all had issues with the traffic circle, but it is not, other than the lighting, for us to make a recommendation to the traffic circle. I appreciate that it's coming from the public to the city. That's where it needs to come
And
from.
we should put it on our agenda
For June 7th, I'd be happy to be here.
before somebody does get killed there. I mean, we didn't worry about that with the stop sign. Somebody
Okay,
get killed there.
So what I'm understanding, and I just want to be clear about this. is that then for the June 7th meeting, the only agenda item that we have at this point is a recommendation to put stop signs at the circle. I have to be sure what we're,
Instead of yields.
Just westbound is, at the moment,
Right.
is our, having lived, we live near there, we see it, we hear. see it
okay,
on the
what
all the
I'm going
time.
to do as chair of this committee, I am making a note that June 7th agenda item is discussion of safety at the circle. And that discussion can be anything from stop signs to shrubbery to whatever you think. But that is the only agenda item that I have for June 7th meeting. If there is something else that comes up, you must get it to me prior to May 25.
May I bring
And
another
then,
issue up?
at some point, because this is time that this committee gives to business items, should you tell me that you feel for this particular item, we can wait till September, in the middle of a beginning of a summer season, and address it in September as essentially a new business item for an off-season discussion, because we know nothing's going to happen between June and our summer season. If you would decide that that's what you would do, I would postpone that discussion till September. So it's at the purview of this committee as to when we discuss this item. Is that understood?
I think that sounds good. So we will plan a June meeting for this topic of safety in general at the circle. If things should evolve that we don't need to discuss it in June but can delay it till September, we'll let you know and we'll cancel the June meeting.
Correct. And I will
That's
need to
fine,
know that
fine.
prior to May 25, and I will
Yeah.
send all communication to that.
Or if other issues should come up, let you know by May
Well,
24th.
what about that boardwalk issue? That's gonna
We-
come back from the committee, isn't it? From the boardwalk committee?
If it comes back, then we will put it on an agenda.
But if it
I will
doesn't,
be reporting to them and reporting to the city, and if we don't hear anything back, we will,
we won't put it
our
on.
job as a committee is to deal with things
I
that
just
are
want us to be
broadcast.
ready to act on that if
Okay.
it comes back to us.
The boardwalk. Mhm.
And then now, and Suzanne, I'm not trying to postpone you, but by the nature of time given by the committee,
It's a different issue altogether.
then would you like to speak?
Would that be okay?
That'd be
Thank you.
absolutely perfect.
Okay. You're probably tired of hearing from me. Suzanne Good, 1 Grove Street.
Is your last name spelled G-O-O-D?
With an E, also an E at the
With
end,
an-
so it's
thank
5
you.
letters.
Okay,
1 syllable, though, you're
thank
saying.
you.
And I would like to say that I think you all have more experience. We only moved here year-round about a year and a half ago. We feel that a lot of the cars, whether they're Delaware tags or out of state, they're not respectful of pedestrians in the crosswalk. And this is an endemic problem all across the country. They're dealing with it, in Manhattan and everywhere. But has the city ever considered putting in front of each crosswalk, visible to the cars about to cross each crosswalk, yield to a sign which would state yield to pedestrians in crosswalk?
It has been suggested by this committee that be done. So I'm not trying to cut you off.
I appreciate
That's-
it. No, I
that's been
appreciate you're
suggested.
cutting me off. So is that under consideration already?
And Suzanne,
Consideration is a broad term.
Well,
I'm
things move slowly, I know.
I'm answering your question specifically. This committee recommends things to the city.
Sure.
It has been recommended. I do not have a status report on when that particular suggestion is going to be implemented.
Do you get the impression it's a budgetary problem, or so do you have some idea why? Like, how many years has it been that this has been suggested
A lot.
to the town?
I do not, I can tell you that suggestion was made in 2018, probably in the spring of that year. I'd have to go back to this specific meeting. I cannot give you a precise reason, nor can I give you a schedule of when the city expects to complete certain recommendations.
And
Does
prior
that-
to 2018, you're not aware of that being discussed for it to be near, in proximity to crosswalks, a sign of that, with that word,
That
wording?
exact wording was made to put a pedestrian crosswalk sign on Rehoboth Avenue, visible to drivers in 2018.
2018, okay.
I can tell you that. Now, I cannot give you reasons or whats or wherefores.
Understood. And the only thing we learned in addition, actually, my husband learned it courtesy of one of the firefighters. The town of Lewis, Delaware, in this sort of coastal area, the town of Lewis, Delaware is the only one where a driver, even if a pedestrian just shows an inkling of wanting to cross but is still on the curb, by law in Lewis, a driver can be ticketed for failing to yield. But Lewis is the exception. Knowing that now, I would actually love to live in Lewis, but I can't tell you, trying to cross Rehoboth Avenue between the Circle and, say, the Crystal Diner, there's one crosswalk, and the cars, I'd say one
Now, for
car out of
your-
8
now,
bothered
for
to
your-
stop.
Kathy,
your-
I'm going to do point of order here.
Yeah.
That if we want to put pedestrians in crosswalks on an agenda at some point for a discussion, we should do that. What's happening here
Yeah.
is we're having the discussion that we don't have on the agenda.
Let's put it
Yes,
on
No
the
problem.
agenda.
I appreciate it. I'm done, and I
So I don't discount the
Anything we
issue.
can do to heighten the crosswalks, let's put it on the agenda.
Walter Burnham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. At the beginning of the meeting, you started out, you've done the past couple meetings with reports of who you met with beforehand. We never had that beforehand, and I thank you for it because it cleans up a lot. It lets us know from where you're coming. It is a huge difference. The only other thing I'd bring up, I reported it previous, we have a problem with the arborist, what she wants to do, et cetera. On First Street, in Rehoboth, north of Lake Gerard, on the right-hand side, there are hedges that literally grow out over the shoulders, so much so that regularly people are parking with the left wheels of their vehicles out into the roadway. The hedges, et cetera, need to be peeled back to the property line so the cars can be parked off the roadway and only on the shoulder, and that will let people move up and down the street, but it is from Pennsylvania Avenue all the way up to Park Avenue. It's a problem.
And Walter, I will tell you with that, I was told, take it to building and licensing. That's what I was told with anyone that
They've known
hasn't.
it, they haven't done anything about it, it gets on the record, but Liz is not doing her job, and you live on the north side of town, most of the streets at front on Henlopen and Columbia Avenue, the trees grow beyond the property lines, I could say Easton and most of those streets, and you pull up to the stop bar and you cannot see up and down the street, and they refuse to do it, and they actually send a letter to the homeowner rather than going out there and just clearing the problem.
Well, I'm only giving you what was told to me, but
Well,
thank you so much for your comment. I will put it as part of the comments in our minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Should,
When it goes in the minutes,
yes,
and it comes script.
thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I just have one comment. A couple of times, Kathy, you've mentioned you don't have a response from the city. So I want to say I don't find that acceptable, that you're not getting a response. So what I'd like to do is escalate that. And if you and I could work together over the next week or so, I think when we come to the next meeting, whenever that is, we should be able to have the answers that you've been expecting for some time.
Okay.
So I want to try a different approach to get those status updates.
Good.
Okay.
I have one last item. First Street and Second Street, we have our seasonal signs up. They should be international. This idea of no left turn stinks. Put the international signs up there. Your mind sees it, even if you don't spell. It's international, whatever language, and we don't change, but we should.
Okay, there being no other business, I will hear from you by May 25. We will determine whether a meeting is necessary.
Oh, we have a couple items on the agenda.
When is the meeting in June?
June 7 at
June-
10:30. June 7 at 10:30 is our next scheduled meeting on the agenda, and at this time, we only have one item on the agenda, and that is the discussion of safety at the circle, be it stop signs or shrubbery. And there will be a determination made by May 25. If that is the only item on the agenda for that date, we may very well postpone it till September, as it is not a critical issue that can be
Well, I think
determined.
pedestrian cross places is critical. I'm very concerned about that. in the
Okay, but
city.
that's been turned into the city.
I
We
thought
talk
we
about
had,
that a lot.
I
mean,
had
Well,
three
let's talk
other, we
about
had
it some
two
more.
other
Must be
items. I thought
something
we
we can do.
decided to put the North Boardwalk issue on the
No.
agenda in case we had feedback.
No,
If
no.
we have
We add
feedback.
things to the agenda as they are given to us to consider. I have only one new item on the agenda for June 7th, and it is the discussion of safety at the circle. Hopefully by that date, we will have updates from a variety of people. If that's the case, then we can determine to meet that day. It's a scheduled meeting. If we do not have sufficient agenda to warrant meeting that day, we can always postpone it till September. That's what I am letting you know. Okay? Any questions? Thank you. The
Thank
meeting
you.
is adjourned at 12:07.
That's too long to let important things go until September.